This conference will now be recorded.
That's what I get. So I'll just do a quick recap. We just did an update on the current OER materials / projects that are in progress. The Boat 216, which Ann O'Connor is working on getting Lumen materials put together. She's done her mapping of objectives already. And then the Business 105 that Sarah Shepler's working on, who is finishing up her mapping and looking at using Waymaker. And then History 101 with Milan that is still in progress. And so we are working to get those review teams put together as well. So again, if anybody has any interest in becoming a reviewer for either of those or any of those, or if you know anybody who might be interested, please reach out to me and we can talk a little bit more about that. So any other questions, concerns, comments on the current OER projects? Okay. Last meeting, which was way back in October, if you remember, we had talked about putting together a draft of an OER survey for students and instructors. I had thought that we had a group of folks that were interested in that. My memory has escaped me as to who those folks were, and whether there was anything needed from me or if that was already in progress. If anybody happens to remember more than I am.
It was James and
Okay.
Jan. James and Jan
Okay.
on that.
All right, and you have everything you need. You don't need anything from me.
Yep.
Okay.
You're
Thank
so
you.
confident.
I was hoping somebody on here would have remembered. Sorry, Jan, what were you saying?
James is so confident.
That's hilarious.
I didn't say how far we were along. I just said we were along.
Okay.
He says it with a smile.
Yes, I do.
That's right.
I was like, Sarah, I was working to remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, James. I'm glad that somebody remembered, because I was like, I know that we talked about it, but that's really the most I can actually remember. So, all right, so that's kind of in progress, and we can follow up on that in a later meeting. Also, the Midwestern OER conference that was co-sponsored by the CHE, James, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to share about that, but I knew that we hadn't really talked about it as a group. So if you don't want to share on it, that's fine. I just wanted to at least add it to the agenda as a possible discussion item.
Fine. I can do a pretty brief rundown.
Okay.
CHE was part of a Midwestern higher education compact, and last November I attended a convening on OER, which got everywhere from states from Ohio all the way to Nebraska in the upper Midwest. A lot of the people that we know, for those of us who've gone to the conferences, a lot of the folks that you would anticipate that you've seen from the conferences, they were there. The folks from Minnesota were there that run that repository. A couple other folks that ran into, the librarian from the private library network, and I can never remember her name. She was there. She was part of our group.
Amanda Herford.
Yep, that's it. She was part of our group. Because it's like, you look familiar. I know I've run into you at that conference, and sure enough. So for the state of Indiana, we had a librarian from ISU, a chem prof from IUPUI, a vice president of academic affairs from Trine, and then me and the librarian from the private library network. And so what they were trying to do over the course of the 2 or 3 days is get us together to try to see what the state of OER is in our state, and then what kind of action steps working together, what kind of network could we build around OER. And clearly at this point, ISU has a pretty decent OER collection. We have a pretty decent OER collection, and then after that it starts to really drop. So it looks like there is some room for growth here. We also are trying to identify other players and stakeholders that we could have at the table. For example, on the state level at the Department of Education, there's, and I can't remember her name, but there's a gal that runs a very solid OER program for the K-12 folks. So we're trying to find a way to reach out to her and get her involved. So overall, it was very informative, and we're looking at trying to make part of it is also awareness, as we know, and just trying to get the word out that this is a possibility, that OER is an option. So one of our strategies as a group is that we are going to try to get out and present at as many convenings, conferences, and whatever else we can find to move the needle, as it were. So our first, I think, is at LEAP in February, and then we're going to kind of work from that point forward. Overall, it's a very good working group. It's a nice place to start, and it's good to see that there's that level of interest out there. So hopefully we can also look at, well, good, Anne, it'll be great to see you there. Maybe you can dovetail into our conversation. So it would also be, it'd be interesting, especially with ISU having somewhat of a repository, it seems. It would be kind of interesting to see if we could work together and find ways to kind of share resources and that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we can kind of bridge that gap a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. There was some really good presentations. It was a little different than our usual open ed style. It was a little more stuffy, to be honest with you. They had a bunch of legislators there and some other folks. They did a student panel, but it was all student government folks, and so they were kind of stuffy too. But it was it was a really good. I mean, it's some really good connections and some really great people to talk to.
That's awesome.
May I add on to some of that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I didn't go to this meeting, but Amanda Herford came back, and librarians across the state have formed a group to investigate how libraries support OERs and what can be done for in the libraries and to bring OERs onto their campuses. And Amanda is from the group called POWNY. So POWNY is a group of librarians from private colleges. Then we have representatives from ALI, which is Academic Libraries of Indiana. And that's the public, Notre Dame, Purdue, IU, Ball State are all in that group, along with Ivy Tech and several others, Taylor, and there's some private ones in there too. And then ILF, which is the Indiana Library Federation, which is public schools and which is all libraries actually. So we're joining forces and have done a survey so far, which in our next meeting we're going to go over the data to find out who's doing what in their libraries, and then what role librarians have in this, and how to bring that effort to a state level for support and training and conferences and promotion, that kind of thing. So that's Amanda's our link to the group that James had too. So she'll probably bring what we're doing in our group to your discussion, James.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then I'm going to, you mentioned the K-12 initiative. At the end of this month, there's an Open Ed, Open Indiana conference for K through 12. And I'm going to that, representing this group, to investigate and find out, how we can connect with the K-12 initiative. So it's a smooth transition from OERs from that group to college group, to see if there is anything like that. And if you can remember the name of that person in the K-12, James, that would be good if you could send that to me, and I will try and find her at that group, at that conference.
I'll do.
Awesome. Thanks, Jan.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's some very interesting information. And I think, the more that we can connect with other institutions is great. To even just share some best practices, but also to get our own ideas is super helpful. So it's good to hear that we're kind of on par with what others are doing. And perhaps we can help those that need to grow or wanting to grow certainly, would be interested in looking at some of that. So keep us updated on that group, James, and what else, you might need from us, if anything, and we can keep pushing that forward. So thanks for that update.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, so that will segue us into the conversation about OER Week, which is coming up in March. So that first full week in March, the 4th through the 8th, just starting to think about a plan for that. I haven't actually done anything yet. Last year was a little bit last minute, unfortunately, with just the way things panned out. And I did a lot of social media posts from the kind of systems office level that Lumen had helped me with. So actually we'll still have some of that to use, those templates to use in terms of a social media push. But I'm wanting, obviously, to do more than that this year, since we've got a little bit more time to plan that out. So wondering if anybody has any initial thoughts on that. Jan, I know you were involved, at least I think, when Adam had kind of spearheaded OER Week, gosh, would have been 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you wanted to share anything about that, anything that you thought might have gone well, or anything you probably wouldn't want to do again that maybe didn't go so well. Just any thoughts on that you could share?
Well, what we did is we set up displays in the libraries who had staff and time to do that, and just promoted OERs. We created a pamphlet that we pretty much used statewide, I think, and then added to that with our own materials relating to our own campuses. But, librarians just promoted it. I think I took pictures of the different displays and stuff like that. It's just more or less getting the word out. There wasn't activities or anything that went along with it at all.
Okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Jan here. I discovered her One Button Studio at the end of the beginning of the fall term, and did a cool little, I thought it was cool, my students haven't said much about it, but a little video presentation that I loaded into my Canvas site. But we're coming up on the 2nd anniversary of the completion of our World Religions in Greater Indianapolis project, which gave us these OER resources that are loaded on the IUPUI website. One or two things I'd like to do as part of this initiative to the week is to get those modules loaded at Ivy Tech. And Jan offered this before, but I kind of dropped the ball. So that might be an OER item. We would have that done and then announce it as part of the celebration that week. But also, I'll get with Jan about the One Button Studio, that maybe there's a little promotion piece that I could do, or some of our teachers could join me in doing. That we'd make a quick little video that would introduce the OER resource that we have with the World Religions as a way to kind of jumpstart engagement. Like James was saying, get the word out. Every route we take, we know what we got, but we're not finding that others know as much. So with this idea, Sarah, of the week coming up in a month, I could get with Jan and start looking at both of those.
We could make videos. Sarah, are you downtown or out at Lawrence still?
Downtown.
Okay. We could make videos and get several here on campus who use OERs, or students who are in classes, and maybe bring them in to see if they would, just answer a few questions about it, and then upload those videos into Facebook. If other campuses have that kind of capability, we could just get a variety of videos and just kind of do something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I have a place on the Ivy Tech. I know I've said this multiple times, but I have a spot on the Ivy Tech website, like a page that we could use to kind of put all this material in one place if we wanted to. And perhaps that can help kind of for us to kickstart that page, whereas right now it's blank. That can maybe help us to kind of get some things started on there, and then, eventually we would change things out, but that could at least be our kind of jumping off point to this is the OER website, and start to put some of those OER week items on there. And then eventually that would morph into like our, our consistent OER site moving forward, right? That's the one that we would always point people to, but at least that way it would get people in there and recognize what it is. And then we could, you know, switch things out once OER week is over and we want to move to our regularly. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. When is the podcast going to be broadcast?
It's supposed to be, all I asked was if it was possible to release it before March 4th. So that's all I know. The goal is to record on the 12th of February. And then I just kind of said, how early will we have to record in order for it to be out before the 4th? And that was the date that I was given. So that is my understanding, is that sometime before March 4th, it would be released on the podcast.
Can you put a link to that podcast on the OER page?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's a great idea. Okay. I think this is good. Oh, go ahead.
Sarah, we get in the curriculum committee meetings, these, OER is brought up periodically, but I'm wondering on the website or in some of these presentations, if we might find ways to encourage faculty who want to teach these as a pilot course to talk to their chairs and work on that.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that's a really, really good idea. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know that they can, at least have the conversation with their chair about that, or they just don't realize it's a possibility, or maybe just don't want to look into it. I mean, there's a variety of reasons, right? But I do think that it would be great to include that as part of, that week, and trying to get people some more exposure to what we're doing with OER. So that would be great. Yeah, that sounds really good so far. And obviously we'll follow up next month. We will have one more group meeting before OER week. So we will have one more time to really, look into this more and talk about what we're, able to do at that time. So hopefully, between now and our next meeting, we can try to get some things together. I will definitely take the website piece of this and work with marketing to get that going. And so if you have anything, websites or links or anything that you would want to put on the website, just let me know. That's going to be one of my tasks over the next few weeks, to get that website up and running, because it's been on my list for far too long. So this is a great excuse to buckle down and get that done. So, and I know Lumen's willing to work with us too on getting that up and running as well. So I will take that item, and then we will follow up next month on, anything else. But I didn't want to cut the conversation off if anybody else had any other ideas for OER week before I move on. Okay. Sorry, just wanted to make sure I didn't cut anybody off there. So more to come on that, but obviously, let me know what ideas you have other than what we discussed today. If there's anything else that comes up, just feel free to reach out, and we will hopefully get this all this plan together before we get too close. I'm hoping, since we had a little bit more time this year, that we'll be able to do a little bit more with OER week this year. So,
Sarah?
Yes.
Ann O'Connor, is there any way we could get Lumen to make up some posters that we could put on some of the campuses? Here at Greencastle, it would be nice to have some posters, and I'm sure downtown, Avon, some of our outlying areas. I'd love to circulate some posters to let people know that, hey, we've got the access for free materials.
Yeah, I don't know for sure if that's something that they have, but I can definitely find out. I know a lot of what they do in terms of promoting is digital. So I don't know that they would necessarily have something like ready to go, but I'm sure that they'd be willing to look at putting something together for us, especially for that week. So let me look into that and see what I can find out.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So let's just move on real quick. I had a reminder about the OER policy that our Action Learning Project team was working on for Leadership Institute. So I had sent something out to everyone earlier this month asking for some feedback. We're looking to get that feedback by the end of this month, so by the 31st. If you have misplaced my email or need me to resend it, just let me know and I can get that back out to you. Because I know I've already received a few emails back with some feedback, so that's super helpful. If there's anything else that you would like to send about the OER policy we're planning to put together, please let me know by January 31st. And then we will, the next place we're going to be going with that is to the CAOs. Any questions on that? Okay. Okay, Anne, I will send that to you to make sure that you have that. I may just resend it out to everyone, but I'll take a look at that. The other thing I wanted to mention, I want to go back through our action items from the original Simplex we did in fall of 2017. We've gotten through a lot of this list, but I think it's important to keep looking at this. So if you could take a look, it's further down in this agenda, and let me send the link out in the chat. I can send a link to the notes if you need that. Further down in the notes, you'll see the table with all of our action items from Simplex. If you could take a look at that, anything that's assigned to you, if you have updates on it, I'm planning on going over that in our next meeting. I didn't want to, it didn't seem like a good time to do it now. So let's at least take some time to look through these and see if there's anything we can start to chip away at. And then we will follow up on those in our next meeting. And that is the last thing I had today. So anything else for the good of the group today that anybody wants to discuss?
I'm sending some links out from the very Open Ed Week, and then Oregon has a really great idea using a theme of a menu with selections for each day and activities and stuff that was kind of good, but there might be some ideas on some of that stuff too.
Awesome. Okay, I put that in the notes. I will take a look at that.
Okay.
Let me put your other one in here. So if anybody else wants to take a look at these, I'll put them in the notes, and then we will go from there. Thank you for sharing those.
Discussion on the listserv has started to ramp up with this coming up in the holidays.
I figured. Yeah, I figured. That's kind of the next thing on everybody's list in terms of OER. So, okay, all right, well, that sounds good. So if anything else comes up in terms of OER week or anything else related to OER you want to talk to me about, please let me know. We can go into more detail about any of these. And then our next meeting is the last Tuesday in February. Which is the 26th. So I will talk to you all on February 26th if I don't talk to you before then. But just please reach out if you have any questions or need anything, and then we will talk again next month.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yep, have a good day, guys.
Bye.
Bye.